Tonight, the sun sinks behind the 7 hills, and the long shadows of the insulae stretch across the cobblestones like grasping fingers. Tonight, the city of Rome, that great, teeming beast of 1,000,000 souls, begins its slow exhale, releasing the heat of the day, the dust of the markets, the clamor of the chariots. And tonight, in a cellar barely wide enough to turn around in, a woman opens her eyes. She does not wake so much as surface, rising from a sleep that was never deep enough, into a darkness that is never complete. The oil lamp on the shelf has burned low, its flame guttering, casting her shadow large and wavering against the rough plaster wall. She is here, in this space that is both her home and her workplace, her prison and her stage. She is a meretrix, a prostibula, a lupa, a she-wolf. She is the woman the poets use as metaphor, the moralists use as scapegoat, the politicians use as a line item in a tax ledger. But tonight, she is simply herself, a woman with a name you will never know, a woman who will paint her face, tie her sandals, and walk out into the Roman night to do what she has done 1,000 times before. Tonight, we follow her. Tonight, we enter the world of the Roman prostitute, not as scholars or spectators, but as witnesses. Dim the lights. Let the soft hum of a fan fill the room. And let us begin. The first sensation is not light, for there is none. It is the weight of a body that has not rested, pressed into a mattress of musty straw that has long since surrendered any pretense of comfort. You regain consciousness not with the gentle pull of dawn, but with the abrupt, unwelcome return of a self that is both yours and not yours, a self defined by what you do rather than who you are. Around you, the walls of the cellar are close enough to touch from any position, their rough plaster cool with the perpetual dampness that seeps up from the Roman earth. This is your home. This is your office. This is the only space the city of Rome has allotted for the entirety of your existence. This cellar, tucked beneath an insula, one of the city's teetering apartment blocks, or behind a taberna still reeking of yesterday's cheap wine, is a universe condensed to a few square feet. It is a space designed by an architect who valued neither light, nor air, nor the concept of human dignity. A single oil lamp, if business was good enough to afford the oil, gutters on a crude shelf, casting dancing, grotesque shadows that make the walls seem to breathe. Your possessions are few, each one a small triumph of accumulation, a bronze mirror, its surface scratched and clouded, a gift from a client who confused sentiment with payment, a pot of chalk-based face powder, mixed with a smear of red ochre for the lips and cheeks, a wooden comb, its teeth worn uneven, and the clothes you will don when the time comes. A bucket in the corner serves a function you try not to contemplate until the pre-dawn light, when you will navigate the public latrine or the alleyway with the rest of the city's early risers. This is the lot of the infamous, those stripped of legal standing and social protection. You are a meretrix if you are registered and paying the state its due, or a prostibula if you work the streets with a freelance desperation. You might be a slave, serva, your body and its earnings the property of a leno, pimp, who owns the very air you breathe, or you might be a freed woman, liberta, clinging to a precarious independence in a world that considers your very existence a moral contamination. The distinction matters to the tax collector and the magistrate. To your aching back and the gnawing hunger in your belly, it matters very little. The morning begins not with a choice, but with a necessity. You swing your legs off the lectus, the stone or wooden platform that serves as a bed, feeling the cold floor beneath your feet. The first task is to make the space presentable for the day's business. With a broom of twigs, you sweep out the detritus of the night, dried wine stains, stray hairs, a lost sandal strap, perhaps a coin missed in the darkness or, more commonly, the faint, lingering trace of the last client, a scent of sweat, cheap perfume, and the sour tang of disappointment. This is your officium, your workspace, and its cleanliness is the first and most fragile layer of your professionalism. Next comes the preparation of the self. You wash with water you fetched at dawn from the public fountain, a splash on the face, a rinse of the mouth with sour wine if you have it. The luxury of the public baths is a distant dream for days when the coins are more plentiful. The water is cold and hard, but it serves. You apply the face powder, a thin, pale mask to create the ideal of pale Roman beauty, then the rouge on lips and cheeks, a defiant splash of color against the fatigue that etches lines around your eyes before their time. You paint your eyes with kohl, a paste of soot and fat, drawing lines that elongate and darken, designed to hint at mystery, to conceal the hollows of exhaustion. The goal is not to look beautiful in the way a senator's wife is beautiful, chaste, demure, sequestered. The goal is to look available, alluring, and, above all, worth the coin. The final, most significant step is the garment. A respectable Roman woman, a matrona, wears the stola, a long, layered dress that signifies her role as the bearer of a citizen's lineage, a woman bound to a single man, her virtue a cornerstone of the Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods. You are denied that privilege by law. Your uniform is the toga. The same garment that signifies the ultimate male Roman citizen is, on a woman, a scarlet letter, a visual declaration, I am not respectable. I am for sale. It is often made of a coarser, cheaper wool than a senator's, perhaps dyed a brighter color, a cheap, loud red or a garish yellow, to catch the eye from across the noisy, crowded forum. It is worn short, perhaps with a strophium, a breastband, beneath, a deliberate flouting of the matron's modesty. You add your cheap jewelry, glass beads, a bronze ring, earrings that dangle and catch what little light there is. Your sandals are simple, or you go barefoot to better feel the cobblestones and the mood of the street. Your hair, perhaps dyed blonde with a concoction of goat fat and beechwood ash to mimic the exotic allure of a Gaulish captive, is styled and pinned. A wig, if you can afford one, is the ultimate luxury, a symbol that you have risen enough to purchase a new identity. You glance at your reflection one last time. A face looks back, painted and powdered, a stranger's face that you have learned to inhabit. You practice the half-smile, the knowing tilt of the head, the look of weary seduction that has become your currency. A customer, in a rare moment of drunken generosity, once called you charmingly awake. You hold on to that phrase as you will hold on to a denarius later, clutching it close, a small, glittering proof that you exist in a world that would prefer you did not. The city of Rome in the 1st century AD is 1,000,000 souls pressed into a labyrinth of brick and marble, a metropolis of staggering inequality and relentless, visceral energy. Its heart beats not in the marble halls of the Palatine, but in the narrow, twisting vici, the streets that snake between towering insulae, where the noise is a constant, physical presence. Carts rumble over cobblestones at night, the only time they are permitted, their iron-shod wheels grinding the stone and shattering sleep. Hawkers shout the merits of their goods, olives, fish sauce, cheap wine. The cries of children, the bark of dogs, the chant of a religious procession, the clatter of a workshop, all blend into a symphony of chaos that forms the backdrop of your life. Your place in this symphony is a fixed note. If you are fortunate enough to work from a lupanar, the name derived from lupa, she-wolf, the slang for a prostitute, your stage is the doorway or a window. Brothels are rarely the discreet, hidden places of later imaginations. They are often located in the most bustling, commercially vibrant districts, near the fora, the markets, the public baths, and, most importantly, the tabernae. Proximity to alcohol is a business strategy as old as commerce itself. A man with a few cups of Falernian in his belly, his inhibitions loosened and his coin purse still heavy, is a far more promising prospect than a sober one heading home for his evening meal. The lupanar itself is a building of often grim efficiency. It might be a 2-story structure, with a narrow hallway running its length, off which open the celli, the tiny, vault-like rooms. In Pompeii, the lupanar on the Via dell'Abbondanza still stands as a testament to this architecture. Its walls are covered with graffiti, not just the bawdy boasts of clients, Felix fucked well here, but also the names of the women who worked within, their prices, their perceived specialties, and the occasional, poignant expression of loneliness or love scrawled beside a painted phallus. A stone bed, or a masonry platform topped with a thin mattress, sits in each room. The floor above might have wooden balconies from which women could call down to passers-by. Privacy is a modern concept. Doors, if they exist, are replaced by simple curtains, offering the thinnest veil between the transaction within and the public parade without. Your marketing, therefore, is a performance. Leaning against the doorframe, you project your voice into the human current. Hic bene, you might call out. Good things here. Or you might be more direct, 2 asses, for a quick visit. I won't tell your wife. You learn to read the crowd, the soldier with his campaign pay jingling in his pouch, the young man from the provinces, eyes wide with the city's promise of license, the balding senator who casts a furtive glance behind him before slowing his step. You learn the difference between the man who is merely curious and the man who is looking for something specific, something that will leave a bruise or a wound you'll have to hide, but you are not always anchored to a doorway. Rome's prostitutes are as mobile as its commerce. The prostibuli, a term that carries a connotation of the lowest, most public form of the trade, move through the city like human advertisements. You know the best corners, near the Circus Maximus on race days, where the excitement of the chariots spills over into a fever of spending, by the Porta Capena, where travelers arrive and depart, their needs immediate and their attachments nil, in the Suburra, the dense, chaotic neighborhood between the Esquiline and the Viminal Hills, where the city's underworld throbs with gambling, drinking, and the desperate energy that fuels all-night commerce. You learn to avoid the vigiles, the city's fire watchmen and night watch, whose job it is to keep order, and whose definition of order often depends on the size of your bribe. Your competition is fierce. There are other women, some free, some enslaved, each with her own price and her own regulars. There are the more refined meretresses who operate from rented rooms above a popina, a modest eatery, and cater to a wealthier clientele, offering conversation and a pretense of intimacy. There are the enslaved girls in the grand houses of the wealthy, a secret, terrible resource for the master of the house and his guests. And there is always the risk of the leno, the pimp, who sees you as a resource to be exploited. If you work for a leno, a portion, often the majority, of every coin you earn disappears into his palm. He provides the room, the protection, and a boot to your backside if you are slow or insolent. If you are his slave, you have no claim to your own earnings. Your body is his capital. Pricing is an art form, a negotiation that balances need, desire, and the brutal arithmetic of survival. There is no set rate. The denarius, a silver coin worth 16 asses, copper coins, is the standard unit of a day's pay for a laborer. Your value fluctuates with the hour, the location, and the desperation in your eyes. At the bottom of the scale, a prostibula on a slow afternoon might accept a single as, a coin so small it barely buys a loaf of bread. She might be paid in kind, a meal of bread and salted fish, a pair of worn sandals, a promise that rarely materializes. For many, this is not a matter of choice but of pure necessity. The body must be sold to feed it, a grotesque cycle that Rome's moralists denounce from their villas while their own slaves work in the city's bakeries and bathhouses. If you work from a lupanar, your rate is often fixed by the leno. In Pompeii, graffiti records prices ranging from 1 to 4 asses for a standard encounter. Inscribed in the walls are the names and prices of women, a kind of ancient menu. Emilia, one such inscription might read, Hic bene, 3 asses, Emilia, good service here, 3 asses. The price might be posted on a sign outside the cellar, a frank negotiation that removes any pretense. To command a higher price, you need a niche. A meretrix who can read and write, a rare and valuable skill, can charge a premium. A man might pay not just for her body, but for the illusion of intellectual companionship, to have a woman who can listen to his mediocre poetry, laugh at his jokes, and discuss the finer points of Greek philosophy between the act. A talent for music, playing the tibia, a double flute, or the lyre, adds another layer to the performance, transforming a physical transaction into something that resembles a salon. A reputation for exotic specialties, for erotic dances, or for a particular skill advertised in graffiti could draw a wealthier clientele, men who paid not just for the act but for the status of having access to a woman who was known, who was a name to be dropped in the baths. Then there is the leno's cut. It is a constant, silent subtraction from your labor. If you are a slave, you own nothing. Every as you earn belongs to your master. He might, if he is particularly calculating, allow you a small stipend for necessities, a tiny allowance meant to foster the illusion of hope and prevent utter despair. The path to freedom, manumission, is a distant dream, requiring you to save enough from this pittance to purchase your own liberty, a sum so large it might as well be the moon. Some women are freed by their masters for a variety of reasons. Perhaps they were a favorite, perhaps the master was dying and wished to make a grand gesture, perhaps they were simply no longer profitable. Most are not. They work until their bodies fail, until their looks fade, until the Leno casts them out into the street to beg or die. The single most extraordinary window into your life is the graffiti that covers the walls of Roman cities, from the grand public monuments to the most squalid back alley Pompeii. In Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Rome itself, these inscriptions, scratched, painted, and carved, form a vast, unedited archive of the everyday. They are the voices of the people who lived, loved, and struggled in the shadows of empire. For you, a prostitute, these inscriptions are your Yelp, your advertisement, your legacy. Some are simple boasts, the proud declarations of a satisfied, or self-aggrandizing, client. Hic ego puellas multas futui, one might read, here I fucked many girls. Others are more specific, providing a form of ancient customer review. Murtis, you fuck well, is a common sentiment. Perscia, the beautiful one, gave it up for a denarius, another might state, a price tag attached to a name, a public record of your worth. These are not hidden, they are displayed openly, a permanent advertisement and a reminder of your infamia. You might use graffiti to your own advantage. For a small fee, you can pay a literate client or a professional scribe to inscribe your name, your location, and your rate on a wall near a busy thoroughfare. Celia, Meretrix, 2 asses, near the Temple of Venus, would be a simple, effective advertisement. A more creative approach might involve a short poem, praising your beauty and your skill. A rival might be the target of a curse, a defixio, scratched onto a lead tablet and left in a sacred spring or buried at a crossroads, calling upon the gods of the underworld to cripple her business, dry up her clients, or make her hair fall out. The walls become a public ledger of desire, competition, and commerce. They are a reminder that in a world without newspapers or other mass media, the visual landscape of the city is the primary means of communication. Your name, scrawled in charcoal or carved with a nail, becomes a part of the city's fabric. It is both a mark of your profession and a testament to your existence. In a society that seeks to render you invisible, you have left your mark. Religion in Rome is not a matter of private belief but of public ritual, a vast system of transactional relationships with the gods who control every aspect of life, from the harvest to the outcome of a battle. For you, a woman on the margins, the divine is a source of potential protection, a last court of appeal in a world that offers you no earthly justice. Your patron deity is Venus. The goddess of love, beauty, and desire is a complex figure, at once sacred and profane. Her temple on the Capitoline Hill is a place of immense power, but you are more likely to pray at a small shrine on a street corner, offering a few flowers, a pinch of incense, or the perfume you can barely afford. You pray to her not for love in the romantic sense, but for luck, for charm, for the ability to draw men to you and to separate them from their coin. There is a deep cynicism in this devotion, a recognition that the same force that drives the poets to ecstasy also drives your clients through your door. Fortuna is another crucial deity. She is the goddess of luck, chance, and fate, the one who determines whether a client will be generous or violent, whether the vigiles will pass your corner or stop to harass you, whether the Leno will be in a good mood or a punishing one. Your income is a lottery. A good day might bring a senator with a heavy purse and a quick conclusion, a bad day might bring nothing but insults and a kicked sandal. You carry a small charm of fortuna, a fascinum, a phallic amulet, for good luck, or you tie a red cord around your ankle to ward off the malocchio, the evil eye. There is a darker side to this spiritual commerce. The defictions, or curse tablets, are a common feature of Roman life, and they are used with particular frequency in the world of sex work. A rival who is stealing your clients might find a lead tablet buried near her doorstep, inscribed with a curse, "May her clientele dry up." May her face become as ugly as a corpse. May her leno beat her until she cannot walk. You might commission a witch, there are always women in the suburra who know the old ways, to brew a love potion to bind a wealthy client to you, or a more dangerous concoction to cause a man who cheated you to suffer. This is not mere superstition, it is a pragmatic response to a world where the official legal system offers you no protection. If a man refuses to pay, you cannot sue him. You can, however, pay a witch to make his manhood wither. It is a crude but effective form of justice. Love, for you, is a luxury, a danger, and a recurring delusion. It is something that walks in through your door with alarming regularity, usually in the form of a man who has had too much wine and a very particular vision of himself. I am different, they say, clutching your hand and looking into your eyes with an earnestness that you have learned to interpret not as a declaration of feeling, but as a prelude to negotiating a lower price. They tell you of their unhappy marriages, of the coldness of their wives, of their profound loneliness. They promise to take you away from all this, to buy your freedom, to install you in a little house with a garden and a loyal slave of your own. You smile, nod, and make the appropriate noises. You do not believe them, but you cannot afford to be rude. A man with a fantasy is a man who will return. Sometimes, despite all your defenses, something real stirs. A regular client, a man who is consistently kind, who pays without haggling, who remembers a detail from a previous conversation, who brings you a small gift, a hairpin, a piece of fruit, not as payment, but as a gesture. The walls you have built, the careful distance you maintain, begin to feel like a cage. You find yourself looking forward to his visits, to the illusion of normalcy, of being desired not just for your body but for the person you pretend to be. This is a dangerous game. In the eyes of the law, you are infamous, a person without legal standing. You cannot marry a Roman citizen, no matter how much you might love him. A citizen's marriage is a legal arrangement for the production of legitimate heirs, a union with you would produce liberi naturals, children without legal status, who could not inherit property or hold public office. Your relationship can only exist in the shadows, a secret from his family, his colleagues, the world. And when the fantasy collides with reality, when his wife discovers the affair, when his political ambitions require a clean reputation, when he simply grows bored, you will be discarded. More reliable, more enduring, are the bonds you forge with the other women who share your life. You work alongside them, share their space, their food, their secrets. You know who has a violent client, who is saving to buy her freedom, who is sick, who is pregnant, who is terrified. You look out for each other. You warn each other about dangerous men. You cover for each other with the leno. You share the small, precious moments of solidarity, a laugh over a customer's ridiculous demands, a shared cup of wine after a long night, a whispered promise to remember one another if one of you ever escapes. Some of these friendships blossom into something deeper, something that defies the strictures of Roman patriarchy. Hidden from the public gaze, in the cramped cellar or in the shadows of the baths, you might find a love that is not transactional, not a danger, but a genuine, sustaining partnership. And there are the lies you tell yourself to get through the day. That one day you will quit. That you have a patron who is serious about buying your freedom. That the next client will be the last. That if you can just save a little more, you will open a small perfume shop in Ostia or a taberna of your own, a place where you can be respectable, where you can own property, where you can be your own woman. These fantasies are not foolishness, they are a form of survival. They are the small, flickering flames of hope that keep you going when the alternative, to accept that this is your life, that this is all you will ever be, is too dark to contemplate. If you work in a regulated establishment, your relationship with the Roman state is intimate and parasitic. The vectigel ex capturis, the tax on captured women, is a levy on the sale of sex, a formal recognition by the state that your profession, for all its moral condemnation, is a vital component of the urban economy. The tax is collected by the publicani, private tax collectors who bid for the right to collect revenue in a given province or district. These men are among the most hated figures in the empire, notorious for their ruthlessness and their ability to extract wealth from any transaction. They keep detailed records on wax tablets, tracking your earnings and ensuring the state gets its cut. To be a legal meretrix, you must register with the aediles, the magistrates responsible for the city's markets, public order, and moral oversight. The aediles maintain a list of registered prostitutes, a formal acknowledgement of your existence and your profession. This registration, while an added burden, also offers a perverse form of legitimacy. It means you are not a fugitive, not a criminal evading the state's grasp. It allows you to operate openly, to be a known quantity in the city's vast, grimy machinery. The alternative, being an unregistered, freelance prostibula, leaves you more vulnerable to the whims of the vigiles, who can arrest you, fine you, or simply take what they want without any pretense of legality. For enslaved women, the state's involvement is even more direct and brutal. Some are branded or tattooed on the forehead with their owner's name or the mark of a lupa, she-wolf. This branding is a permanent declaration of your status, a mark that makes it impossible for you to ever pass as a respectable woman, even if you are later freed. It is a form of social control, a scarlet letter burned into the flesh, ensuring that your infamia is inescapable. The mark might be a simple SV for serva, or a more elaborate design indicating the lupanar to which you belong. A client, seeing this mark, knows exactly what you are and what he is entitled to. It removes any lingering pretense of the transaction being anything other than what it is. On a good day, when the coins have been plentiful and the leno is feeling generous, you indulge in the great Roman luxury, the public bath. The thermae and the smaller balnea are the social hubs of the city, a place where men and women of all classes, or at least, those with a few asses to spare, can wash, socialize, and engage in the full spectrum of Roman life. For you, a trip to the baths is a rare and precious escape from the claustrophobic confines of your cella. It is a chance to be clean, to be in public as a person rather than a commodity, to see the world beyond your narrow street. The cost of entry is minimal, often just a single as. You undress in the apoditerium, the changing room, storing your belongings in a niche in the wall. You are keenly aware of the glances of the other women, the matrons who look at you with a mixture of contempt and pity, the freed women who might nod in silent recognition. The baths are a great equalizer, stripping away the outward markers of status, the stola, the toga, the jewelry, and revealing the universal vulnerability of the naked body. But the social distinctions are never truly erased. You carry your infamia with you like a second skin. You move through the sequence of rooms. The tepidarium, a warm room, eases the tension in your muscles. The caldarium, the hot room, is a steam-filled cavern where you sweat out the grime and fatigue of the previous nights. A capsarius, a bath attendant, might scrape your skin with a strigil, a curved metal blade, removing the dirt, oil, and dead skin. The sensation is both painful and deeply satisfying, a ritual cleansing that feels almost spiritual. Finally, you plunge into the frigidarium, the cold plunge, a shock that closes the pores and leaves you tingling, alive, and for a brief moment, reborn. The baths are also, of course, a place of business. Men and women circulate, some in search of company as well as cleanliness. A wealthy man might approach you, his eyes appraising your freshly cleaned body, his voice suggesting a more private transaction in one of the bath's curtained alcoves or in his private residence. It is a familiar negotiation, stripped of the street's pretense but imbued with a new setting. The baths are a reminder that your profession is not confined to the lupanar, it is woven into the very fabric of Roman daily life, as natural and as inevitable as the need to wash. The Roman moralists, the senators, the philosophers, the poets, build their careers on the foundation of your existence. They rail against the decline of traditional Roman values, the corruption of the old ways, and the moral decay that they see as endemic to the empire. And in these laments, you are a constant, vivid symbol. You are the lupa, the she-wolf, a creature of base instinct and insatiable appetite. You are the meretrix, the embodiment of a society that has traded its republican virtue for cosmopolitan excess. They use you as a scapegoat, a target for their anxieties about power, gender, and the fragility of the social order. The poet Juvenal, in his satires, paints a picture of Roman women that is a masterpiece of misogyny. He laments the wives who descend into the suburra to visit prostitutes, the noblewomen who are as debauched as the lowest meretrix. He describes the lupanar with a vivid, scornful detail that suggests a familiarity born of more than just moral outrage. The philosopher Seneca, in his letters, uses you as a metaphor for the corrupting influence of luxury, a symbol of a society that has forgotten its Stoic roots. They write about you, they condemn you, they use you to define what they believe Rome should not be. But their condemnation is a mask for complicity. The senators who denounce your trade in the curia are often the same men who, under cover of darkness, are your most reliable customers. They pay a premium for discretion, for a room with a door that locks, for a woman who knows not to speak of what she sees. They come to you with their anxieties, their frustrations, their need for a release that they cannot find within the confines of their public roles. You become a confessor, a repository for the secrets they cannot share with their wives, their colleagues, or their gods. You listen to their political schemes, their fears about the emperor, their petty jealousies, their existential dread. You hold the secrets of the powerful, and in doing so, you wield a form of power that is silent, invisible, and utterly fragile. The aediles, the public officials charged with maintaining order, are a constant presence. They inspect the lupanaria, checking for compliance with regulations, ensuring that the linons are not harboring runaway slaves, and occasionally enforcing sumptuary laws that seek to regulate what you can wear. They might fine a prostitute for wearing a stola, for daring to dress as a respectable matron. They might close a lupanar for a few days as a punishment for some perceived infraction. Their power is arbitrary, a reminder that your existence is tolerated only insofar as it is controlled. The most relentless judgment, however, comes not from the state or the elite, but from the women who are your polar opposite, the matroni. They walk past your doorway with their eyes averted, their bodies wrapped in the stola, their hair covered, their faces set in expressions of rigid disapproval. They see you as a threat to everything they have been taught to value: chastity, fidelity, the sacred institution of the Roman family. Your very existence is an insult to their carefully constructed world. They petition for laws to ban you from the public baths, from wearing jewelry, from walking the streets during certain hours. They would like to see you confined to your cella, hidden from the light of day. Yet, their husbands visit you, their sons lose their virginity with you, their own repressed desires find an outlet in the very women they publicly condemn. You are the shadow against which their virtue is defined. Your body is your capital, and like any capital, it depreciates. The steady erosion of your physical self is a fact of life, a constant, silent accounting of loss. The first signs are subtle: the lines around your eyes that appear earlier than they should, the persistent ache in your lower back from the stone bed and the awkward positions, the fading of the skin's elasticity despite the chalk powder and the rouge. But there are more tangible, more dangerous risks. The threat of disease is ever present. Venereal infections, menschelagenes in the Latin, are common and poorly understood. Roman medical texts describe a range of unpleasant symptoms: painful sores, discharges, persistent itching, and in severe cases, the gradual destruction of genital tissue. There are no antibiotics, no effective treatments beyond vinegar washes, herbal poultices made from myrrh or frankincense, and prayers to the appropriate deities. A client might leave you with more than a coin. He might leave you with a condition that will make it impossible to work, that will mark you as damaged goods, that will lead to your expulsion from the lupanar and a slow, painful decline into destitution. Pregnancy is another constant fear. There is no reliable birth control. Some women use silphium, a plant from North Africa so highly prized for its contraceptive properties that it is worth its weight in silver, but it is expensive and, by the 1st century AD, becoming increasingly rare due to overharvesting. Other methods include woolen tampons soaked in olive oil or honey, the use of animal bladders as a primitive form of condom, or the ingestion of various herbal concoctions believed to induce miscarriage. Their efficacy ranges from uncertain to dangerous. A pregnancy is a catastrophe. It means weeks of lost work, a swollen belly that makes you less desirable to clients, and then the impossible choice. Some women carry to term and raise their children within the lupanar, the infant sleeping in a corner of the cella while their mother works. Others abandon their newborns in the streets or at the columna lactaria, a spot near the temple of Pietas where unwanted infants were left, to be raised by a wet nurse or, more often, to die. Infanticide is illegal, but the law is rarely enforced against the desperate and the destitute. For enslaved women, the calculus is even more brutal. A pregnancy might be seen by the Leno as an opportunity, a new child to be raised and eventually sold, or as a liability. Some Lenons force their pregnant slaves to continue working until their condition is too obvious to hide. Others might use the pregnancy as a bargaining chip, a way to extract more money from a client who has become attached. The child, if it survives, is born into slavery, its life predetermined from its first breath. The physical toll is matched by an emotional one. The body that is your capital also houses a mind and a spirit that are being worn down by the constant, grinding pressure of the work. The need to perform desire, to project an allure you do not feel, to smile at men you despise, to dissociate from the physical acts your body performs, this takes a profound toll. The wine you drink to numb yourself becomes a crutch, and then a necessity. The opium you buy from a Greek physician on the Vicus Tuscus provides a temporary escape but deepens the debt you owe to the Leno. The lines between the performance and the self blur, until you are not sure where the meretrix ends and the woman begins. You learn to move through the world in a state of dissociated alertness, your body on autopilot while your mind retreats to some distant, private place where you can still be yourself. In the absence of effective medicine and the solace of the official gods, you turn to the world of magic, a vast, underground current that flows beneath the surface of Roman life. This is the realm of the striges, the witches who gather herbs under the full moon, of the depictions inscribed on lead, of the amulets and charms that promise protection, revenge, or love. It is a world of women's knowledge, passed down through generations, a hidden tradition of power for those who have no place in the official hierarchies. Your room contains its own small arsenal of magical protection. A red coral charm, shaped like a phallus, a fascinum, hangs by the door, warding off the malocchio, the evil eye that your envious rivals or judgmental matrons might cast upon you. A pouch of dried herbs, garlic, verbena, rue, is tucked under your mattress, a prophylactic against disease and violence. You burn frankincense or myrrh when you can afford it, their pungent smoke not just a perfume but a purifier, a way to cleanse the room of the psychic residue of the previous night's clients. When a client cheats you, and they often do, disappearing into the night without payment, or paying you in counterfeit coins, you seek out a witch. In the Suburra, there are women who can be found in the back rooms of Taberni, women with one eye clouded by a cataract and hands stained with the juice of herbs. For a fee, they will inscribe a defixio, a curse tablet, with your complaint and a prayer to the underworld gods. I hand over to you, Proserpina, the man who cheated me. Let his feet be bound. Let his hands be bound. Let his mind be bound, so that he cannot eat or sleep until he returns to me and pays what he owes. The tablet is then folded and buried, often in a grave or a sacred spring, a place where the dead can carry the message to the infernal powers. More dangerous, more expensive, are the love spells. A woman might come to you, a matron whose husband has strayed, a young man pining for a meretrix, and ask for a philtron, a love potion, to bind the object of their desire to them. The ingredients are often horrifying, menstrual blood mixed with wine, the hair of the beloved, the flesh of a dead animal, all imbued with the witch's incantations. You have seen the results of such spells, a man driven mad with obsession, a woman who withers away, a sudden, inexplicable death. You stay away from the most dangerous practitioners, the ones who deal in the darker arts, but you know their names, and you know where to find them if you are desperate enough. This world of magic offers you a measure of agency that the official world denies you. It is a way to fight back against those who would exploit you, to protect yourself from harm, to seek a kind of justice that the courts will not provide. It is a system of belief that acknowledges the power of the unseen, the forces that move beneath the surface of things, the same forces that brought you your visions in the Garden of Domremy. It is a thread of power in a life that is otherwise defined by powerlessness. The most feared word in your lexicon is vetula, an old woman. In a profession that trades on youth and beauty, age is not a stage of life but an ending. It is the moment when the rouge can no longer conceal the lines, when the kohl only accentuates the hollowness of the eyes, when the toga that once proclaimed your availability now looks like a costume on a figure that has lost its shape. The clientele that once came through your door begins to dwindle, replaced by men who are themselves older, poorer, or more desperate. The Leno, who once valued you as a reliable earner, begins to look at you with a new, calculating eye. What happens when you age out? The answers are as varied as the women themselves, but they are almost uniformly grim. Some women, if they have been fortunate, or, more often, ruthlessly strategic, manage to save enough money to buy their freedom, if they are enslaved, and then to set themselves up in a modest business. They might open a taberna, a small inn or eatery, becoming the kopi, tavern women, who serve wine and provide a more respectable form of entertainment. They might use their knowledge of the trade to become leni themselves, madams who run their own lupanar, exploiting younger women as they were once exploited. It is a brutal cycle, but for some, it is the only path to a measure of security. Others find work as nutresses, wet nurses, using their bodies in a different way to earn a living. A woman who has borne children, who has milk to give, can find a place in a wealthy household, suckling the infants of the elite. It is a respectable position, or at least a respectable enough one, a step back from the precipice of complete destitution. Some become attendants in the public baths, or workers in the fulling shops, or simply disappear into the anonymous mass of Rome's urban poor, begging for scraps at the doors of the rich. But many simply do not survive. The vetula who has no savings, no patrons, no family to take her in, becomes a fixture of the Roman street, a ghost of the woman she once was. She huddles in doorways, her toga now a tattered rag, her face a map of the decades of abuse and neglect. She is no longer a meretrix, she is a beggar, a nuisance, an object of pity or contempt. She is the living proof of the fate that awaits almost all of you, the end point of a trajectory that began with a hopeful young woman arriving in the city, or a terrified slave being sold in the forum, or a child born into a cellar and raised to know no other life. The Roman state, which taxed your labor and regulated your existence, offers you nothing when your labor is done. There are no pensions for meretrices, no homes for retired prostitutes. The alimenta, the imperial welfare programs, are designed for the children of citizens, not for the women who are officially infamous. You are cast aside, a used-up tool, a reminder of a transaction that Rome prefers to forget. Your death, when it comes, will be unremarked, unrecorded, a brief entry in a Leno's ledger or a name scratched on a cheap tombstone by a friend who can afford the carving. To my dear friend, who worked beside me. May the earth rest lightly upon her. The story of the Roman prostitute is not told in the grand histories of Livy or Tacitus. It does not appear in the official records of the Senate or the triumphal arches of the emperors. To find it, you must look at the margins, at the fragments that the official narrative discarded. You must read the graffiti on the walls of Pompeii, the crude drawings on the walls of the lupanar, the cursed tablets buried in sacred springs, the subliger, loincloth, found in a tannery pit, the cheap glass beads that were once worn around a neck that is now dust. These fragments form an archive of the invisible, a testament to lives that were lived and lost in the shadows of empire. They speak of women like Myrtis, whose price was scrawled on a wall, like Emilia, whose name is listed on a receipt, like Fausta, whose cursed tablet invokes the gods of the underworld against a man who wronged her. They are not the heroes of history, but they are the people who made that history possible. Without their labor, without the release they provided, without the revenue they generated, without the sheer, brute fact of their existence, the Roman Empire would not have functioned. The Roman moralists who condemned them were, in their own way, acknowledging their importance. A society does not need to regulate and tax a phenomenon that does not matter. The constant, anxious harping on the moral decay of Rome, the endless satires and speeches about the corruption of women, the elaborate legal structures designed to control and stigmatize the meretrix, all of this testifies to the centrality of your profession to the Roman imagination. You were the shadow that defined the light, the chaos that gave order its meaning, the unspoken that made speech possible. The world of ancient Rome is long gone, its empire crumbled to dust, its gods forgotten, its marble temples reduced to ruins. But the structures of power, the patterns of exploitation, the hypocrisies of moral condemnation, and the resilience of those who survive on the margins, these are not gone. They are with us still. The vectigal ex capturis, the tax on prostitutes, has echoes in modern debates about the legalization and regulation of sex work. The infamia, the legal stripping of rights and standing, is mirrored in the social stigma and legal vulnerabilities that sex workers face around the world today. The graffiti on the walls of Pompeii, with their crude advertisements and personal testimonies, are the precursors of the backpage ads and the online reviews that shape the contemporary sex trade. The moralists of Rome, who denounced the meretrix while availing themselves of her services, are the ancestors of the politicians who passed laws criminalizing sex work while secretly using it. The women of the lupanar, the prostibuli of the suburra, the meretrices who entertained the elite, are not just historical figures. They are a reminder that the past is not a foreign country, but a mirror. Their struggles with economic desperation, with violence, with disease, with the constant negotiation of desire and degradation, are struggles that are still being fought. Their resilience, their humor, their solidarity, their desperate, fragile hopes, these are not just stories from a bygone age. They are the stories of human beings who, like all human beings, sought to survive, to find meaning, to carve out a space for themselves in a world that was indifferent or hostile to their existence. In the archaeological record, the prostitute of Rome is a ghost. We have no letters written in her own hand, no memoirs, no diary entries. Her voice is only ever heard through the filter of others, the poet who makes her a metaphor, the moralist who makes her a scapegoat, the client who scratches her name and price on a wall. But if you listen carefully to these fragments, you can hear her. You can hear her in the defixio that curses a rival with a bitterness that is still palpable after 2,000 years. You can hear her in the graffiti that lists a price, a negotiation, a transaction that was her only means of survival. You can hear her in the tombstone that a friend carved for her, a few simple words that say, she was here, she worked, she suffered, she died, and she was loved. The lupanar in Pompeii, buried by the ash of Vesuvius, is a museum now. Tourists walk through its narrow hallways, their cameras flashing, their guides pointing out the erotic frescoes and the graffiti. They see the stone beds, the small rooms, the faint outlines of the life that once pulsed within. But do they see the women who lay on those beds, who painted their faces by the light of an oil lamp, who called out to passing strangers, who saved their coins for a future that never came? Can they hear the echoes of their laughter, their weeping, their whispered secrets? This is the challenge of history, to see not just the grand narratives of emperors and wars, but the small, stubborn stories of ordinary people. To look at a piece of graffiti, Maritima gave a good time here, and see not just a crude boast, but a woman who existed, who had a name, who had a life, who mattered to someone. To recognize that the glory of Rome was built not just on the labor of its citizens and the conquests of its armies, but on the bodies of the women who worked in its lupanaria, who fed its desires, who were the silent, invisible foundation of its power. As the sun sets over the ruins of the Roman Forum, the tourists leave, the guards lock the gates, and the city falls silent. In the gathering darkness, the ghosts of the past stir. The marble columns gleam in the moonlight, the broken statues cast long shadows, and somewhere, in the space that was once the suburra, a woman in a short toga leans against a doorframe. She is young, or old, she is a slave, or a freed woman, she is weary, or hopeful. She is all of them, and none of them. She is the Roman prostitute, the lupa, the meretrix, the infamous. She is the one the histories forgot, the one the moralists condemned, the one the poets used as a metaphor for everything that was wrong with the world. And she is still here, her name unwritten on the walls, her voice still echoing in the stones. Her story is not a story of triumph. It is not a tale of overcoming adversity to find happiness and respect. It is a story of survival, of endurance, of the sheer, stubborn will to exist in the face of a world that would prefer you did not. It is a story of the ways in which human beings adapt to the most brutal conditions, finding moments of humor, of kindness, of connection, of meaning, even in the depths of degradation. It is a story that challenges us to look beyond the easy categories of victim and victor, of saint and sinner, of respectability and disgrace, and to see the complex, contradictory humanity that lies beneath. The Roman Empire is gone. The lupanaria are ruins. The toga is a costume worn by actors and frat boys. But the story of the Roman prostitute is not over. It is being told, and retold, in every city, in every generation, in the lives of those who are still pushed to the margins, who are still exploited and stigmatized, who still survive by the labor of their bodies. It is a story that demands to be remembered, not as a curiosity of the ancient world, but as a living part of our own history, a mirror that reflects not just the past, but the present, and the choices we continue to make about who is valued and who is not, who is visible and who is erased, who is human and who is infamous. In the end, the true legacy of the Roman prostitute is not in the marble of the Forum or the laws of the Senate. It is in the fragments, the whispers, the stories that have survived against all odds. It is in the name scratched on a wall, the curse buried in a spring, the tombstone paid for by a friend. It is in the stubborn, persistent refusal to be forgotten. She was here. She worked. She lived. And in the small, quiet spaces where history meets memory, she still speaks. Behind every cellar, behind every painted smile and practiced pose, there is a man with a wax tablet and a pair of iron scales. He is the Leno, the pimp, and he is the accountant of your existence. His name might be whispered in the Suburra with a mix of fear and contempt, Ballio, Caprinius, Sergius, names that carry the weight of 1,000 unpaid debts and 1,000 bruises. He is the man who owns the building, the beds, the oil lamps, and, if you are a slave, you yourself. His ledger is the only book in which your life is recorded with any accuracy, how much you earned, how much you owe, how much you are worth. The Leno is a paradoxical figure in Roman society. He is a businessman, a purveyor of a service that the city officially tolerates and taxes. He may own multiple properties, employ a small army of bouncers, often retired gladiators or dockworkers with more muscle than conscience, and maintain relationships with the aediles through a steady flow of bribes. He is, in a sense, a respected figure in the underworld economy, a man who understands the intersection of desire and commerce. Yet, he is also despised. The law considers him infamous as well, a man whose profession places him outside the pale of respectability. He cannot hold public office, cannot serve as a juror, cannot marry into a senatorial family. His wealth is tainted, his name is a slur. He is the shadow of the citizen, the necessary evil that the city both relies upon and condemns. Your relationship with the Leno is the defining fact of your working life. If you are a slave, serva, you are his property, no different from the bed you sleep on or the jug of wine he sells. Your body is his capital, and he will extract every ounce of value from it before discarding you. He sets your price, dictates your hours, chooses your clients, sometimes for a premium, sometimes as a punishment, and takes the lion's share of your earnings. You are given a daily quota, a pensum, that you must meet. If you fall short, there are consequences, a beating, a reduction in food, a day spent in the ergastulum, a basement cell, with nothing but water and the memory of his fists. If you consistently fail, you may be sold to a Leno in a less reputable part of the city, or to a mining camp in the provinces, a fate worse than any lupanar. But not all Lenons are brutal tyrants. Some are canny businessmen who understand that a woman who is reasonably fed, reasonably rested, and allowed a small measure of dignity will earn more in the long run than one who is starved and beaten. They allow you to keep a percentage of your earnings, a small peculium that you can save toward your eventual freedom. They provide a medicus when you fall ill, not out of compassion, but because a sick meretrix is a loss of revenue. They might even offer you a modicum of protection from the worst excesses of the vigiles or from clients who are excessively violent. It is not kindness, it is investment. If you are a freed woman, Liberta, your situation is different, but not necessarily better. You owe your former master a debt of gratitude, and often, a debt of coin. You may have purchased your freedom with years of savings, only to find that the world outside the lupanar is no kinder than the world within. You are free in name, but you still lack the ius connubii, the right to marry a citizen. Your children, if you have them, will be free but illegitimate, their futures limited. And the Leno who once owned you may still hold a claim on you, a opre, a set number of work days, that you owe him for the privilege of your freedom. You are a tenant now, renting your cellar from him, paying a fixed fee that often leaves you with less than you earned as a slave. You are your own woman, but you are still on your knees. The Leno's ledger is a cold document, a record of transactions that reduce your life to numbers. But it is also a testament to your resilience. Every as you earn is a small victory, a step, however small, toward a future you can call your own. You learn to hide coins from the Leno, to underreport your earnings, to pocket a little extra when a client is generous or drunk. It is a dangerous game. If you are caught, the punishment is severe. But the risk is worth it. A hidden coin is a piece of freedom, a small, glittering promise that one day, you might walk out of this place and never look back. The philosopher walks through your door on a cool autumn evening. He is older, perhaps 50, with a trimmed beard and the calloused hands of a man who has never done physical labor. His toga is of fine wool, but it is worn in a deliberately simple style, a statement of his stoic principles. He carries no coin purse, a service follows behind him, a young man with a bored expression and a heavy bag of denarii. The philosopher looks around your cella with the air of an anthropologist visiting a foreign tribe. He is here to conduct research, or so he tells himself. You have seen his type before. They come to the lupanar with a mixture of shame and intellectual curiosity, eager to test their theories against the reality of your flesh. They want to talk, to philosophize, to argue about the nature of pleasure, the virtue of moderation, the distinction between the body and the soul. They want to believe that they are different from the other clients, that they are seeking not mere gratification but a deeper understanding of the human condition. They want to pay you to listen. You have learned to play this game. You nod at his pronouncements, you ask the right questions, you feign interest in the distinction between Epicurean and Stoic ethics. You are, in fact, a better philosopher than he will ever be, because you have spent your life contemplating the fundamental questions he only discusses in the portico. What is pleasure, when it is purchased with hunger? What is virtue, when it is enforced by a Leno's whip? What is freedom, when your body is a currency? You do not say these things, of course. You smile, you pour the wine, you let him believe that he is enlightening you. And when he is finished, he pays, and he leaves, and he writes about the experience in a letter to his friend Seneca. The philosopher is not unique. He is part of a long tradition of Roman men who have used prostitutes as objects of intellectual and moral contemplation. The poet Ovid, in his Ars Amatoria, wrote a manual for seduction that included advice on how to pick up a meretrix. In the portico of Pompeii, he described the art of the pickup, the careful negotiation, the performance of desire. He wrote as a connoisseur, a man who appreciated the complexities of the transaction. He did not write about the women themselves, their hopes, their fears, their exhaustion. They were, for him, a backdrop, a stage on which his own sophistication was displayed. The historian Procopius, writing in the 6th century, would later describe the Empress Theodora, a former actress and prostitute who rose to become the wife of Justinian, with a mixture of fascination and disgust. He claimed that she performed in a mime show where she would have geese peck at grain scattered over her naked body, a story that says more about Procopius's own prurience than about Theodora's actual career. Theodora, in her rise to power, became the most famous meretrix in Roman history, a woman who defied every expectation and used her intelligence and ambition to seize a place in the world that the law had denied her. She is the exception that proves the rule. A prostitute could become empress, but only by transcending her past, by reinventing herself as something other than what she had been. The philosopher, the poet, the historian, they all use you as a symbol, a metaphor, a cautionary tale. They write about you, but they do not write to you. Your voice is absent from their texts, your perspective invisible. You are the object of their gaze, the subject of their speculation, but never the author of your own story. And yet, you are there, in the margins, in the spaces between their words. When the philosopher leaves your cella, he does not know that you have watched him, that you have seen the tremor in his hands, the guilt in his eyes, the desperate need that drives him to your door. You know him better than he knows himself. You have seen behind the mask of philosophy to the naked, hungry man beneath. Once a year, the city of Rome celebrates the Veneralia, a festival in honor of Venus Verticordia, Venus the changer of hearts. It is a day when the usual rules are suspended, when the matroni of the city come to the temple of Venus to pray for purity and virtue, and when the meretresses of the city come to offer their own devotions. It is a strange, uneasy truce between the women of the stola and the women of the toga, a moment when the rigid boundaries of Roman society blur and shift. The festival takes place on April 1st, a date that marks the beginning of the month dedicated to Venus. The matroni gather at the temple of Venus on the Vicus Cupreus, where they wash the statue of the goddess and offer her myrtle and roses. They pray for beauty, for fertility, for the preservation of their marriages. They perform a ritual that dates back to the earliest days of the Republic, a ceremony that reaffirms the connection between female virtue and the well-being of the state. They are the guardians of the Pax Deorum, the peace of the gods, and their prayers are essential to the survival of Rome. But the meretresses also have a place in this festival. They gather at a different temple, the small shrine of Venus Obsequens, Venus the Compliant, near the Circus Maximus. Here, they offer their own prayers, not for virtue, but for prosperity, for protection, for a year of good business and gentle clients. They burn incense and pour libations of wine, they place offerings of perfume and jewelry at the feet of the goddess. They pray to Venus not as the patron of chaste marriage, but as the mother of desire, the force that drives men to their doors and fills their purses with coin. It is a moment of solidarity, a recognition that they, too, are under the protection of the goddess, that their labor, however despised, is part of the natural order of things. The festival is a reminder that the line between matrona and meretrix is not as fixed as the law would like it to be. Every matrona knows that her husband visits the lupanar, that her son lost his virginity to a meretrix, that her own desires, repressed and denied, are a mirror image of the desires she condemns. Every meretrix knows that the matrona who sneers at her on the street is only a few bad decisions away from sharing her fate. The Veneralia is a moment when this uncomfortable truth is acknowledged, when the women of Rome, divided by status and circumstance, come together to honor a goddess who transcends their differences. After the rituals, there is a feast. The matroni return to their homes, to their husbands and children, to their lives of confinement and respectability. The meretresses gather in the taverns in Pompeii near the Circus Maximus, drinking wine and sharing stories, laughing at the absurdity of it all. They are tired, but for one night, they are free. They are not infamous, they are daughters of Venus, honored in the sight of the goddess. And when the sun rises, they will go back to their celli, back to their clients, back to the endless, grinding work of survival. But for one night, they are something else. For one night, they are almost human. You are pregnant again. It is your third pregnancy, and you know the signs as well as you know the faces of your regulars. The missed courses, the nausea that comes in the morning and lingers through the day, the strange cravings for things you cannot afford. You have been careful as you can be with the limited knowledge and resources available to you, but the body has its own agenda, and the Leno has no interest in contraception that might reduce his profits. Now, you must face the consequences. If you are a slave, the Leno will see your pregnancy as a problem to be managed. He might allow you to continue working for as long as you can hide the swelling belly, using a loose tunic or a strategically placed pillow to conceal the truth. When your condition becomes too obvious, he will take you out of circulation, perhaps assigning you to lighter duties, cleaning, cooking, running errands, until the child is born. The birth itself will be attended by an obstetrix, a midwife, or, if the Leno is cheap, by one of the older women in the lupanar. It will be painful, dangerous, and there will be no medicus unless something goes terribly wrong. And then, there is the child. A girl, perhaps, or a boy. The Leno will see it as an asset, a future worker, a potential earner. He might raise the child within the lupanar, feeding it on the cheapest food, letting it sleep in a corner of the cellar, training it from an early age to serve wine, to run messages, to attract clients. A girl will follow in your footsteps, her fate sealed from the moment of her birth. A boy might be sold to a pastrinum, a bakery, or a falonica, a laundry, or, if he is lucky, to a respectable household where he can learn a trade. You will have no say in the matter. The child is not yours, it is the Leno's property, a future source of income to be managed and exploited. If you are a freed woman, the choices are yours, but they are no easier. You might keep the child, raising it in the cellar, trying to protect it from the worst of the life you lead. You might give it to a nutrix, a wet nurse, paying her a small fee to care for it while you work. You might abandon it at the columna lactaria, the milk column, where unwanted infants are left in the hope that someone will take them in. It is a common practice, so common that the column is a fixture of the Roman landscape, a place of quiet desperation and silent grief. You might wrap the child in a cloth, carry it through the streets at dawn, and leave it in the shadows, hoping that a kind stranger will find it before the dogs do. You will think about this for the remaining months of your pregnancy. You will feel the child move inside you, a flutter of life that is both a comfort and a curse. You will talk to it, sing to it, tell it stories of the world you hope it will never have to see. You will imagine a different life, a life in which you are not a meretrix, a life in which your child grows up free and respected, a life in which the cycle of exploitation is broken. And then, when the child is born, you will make the choice that you have to make, and you will live with it for the rest of your life. The Roman world does not make room for the children of prostitutes. They are liberi naturales, natural children, without legal status, without inheritance rights, without a place in the social order. They are the ghosts that haunt the edges of the family, the reminders of desires that cannot be acknowledged. They grow up in the shadows, learning to survive as their mothers did, passing the legacy of infamia from one generation to the next. Some escape. Most do not. And you, their mother, will carry them with you always, a weight that no amount of wine or opium can ease. The end comes not with a bang, but with a slow, creeping realization. The clients begin to pass you by, their eyes sliding over you as if you were a piece of furniture. The younger women, with their unlined faces and their supple bodies, draw them in with a smile and a wink. You find yourself working longer hours for fewer coins, your back aching, your hands rough, your patience worn thin. The Leno begins to look at you with a new calculation, weighing the cost of keeping you against the value you can still produce. You are a horse that has gone lame, a tool that is wearing out. There is no sentiment in this ledger, there is only profit and loss. You have been saving for years, hiding coins in the cracks of the wall, in the hem of your toga, in the hollow of your sandal. You have a small peculium now, a few hundred denarii that you have scraped together through a lifetime of hunger and humiliation. It is not enough to buy your freedom, if you are a slave, but it is enough to start over, to rent a small room in a different part of the city, to open a tiny taberna where you can sell bread and wine and forget, as much as you can, the life you have left behind. It is a dream, a fantasy, a thing you have held onto through the worst nights, a glimmer of light in the darkness. But the Leno knows about your savings. He has always known. There are no secrets in the lupanar, and the walls have eyes and ears. He has let you keep your peculium because it keeps you working, because it gives you hope, because a woman with hope is easier to manage than a woman with none. But now, as your value declines, he begins to circle, looking for a way to extract that last coin from you, to leave you with nothing. He might raise your rent, increase your quota, invent new fees for the oil and the wine and the washing of your sheets. He might sell you to another Leno, a man who will work you until you drop, who will take your savings as part of the sale. He might simply take it, one night when you are too tired to fight, and tell you that you owe him for some forgotten debt. You have a plan. It is a desperate plan, a plan that could get you killed, but it is the only plan you have. You will wait until the night of the Veneralia, when the Leno is drunk and the lupanar is quiet, and you will take your savings and your few possessions and you will walk out the door. You will walk through the streets of Rome, past the Circus Maximus and the Forum, past the temples and the baths, until you reach the Porta Capena, the gate that leads to the Via Appia. There, you will find a cart heading south, to Neapolis or Puteoli, to a city where no one knows your name, where you can start again. You will be a tabernaria, a tavern keeper, a woman who serves wine and keeps her past to herself. You will be free. It is a foolish dream. The vigiles will stop you at the gate, ask for your papers, demand to know why you are leaving the city in the middle of the night. The Leno will wake, discover you are gone, and send his men after you. You are his property, and property does not walk away. But you have walked the streets of Rome for 20 years. You know the back alleys, the hidden passages, the places where a woman can disappear if she knows how. You have outlasted the Leno, the vigiles, the aediles, the clients, the diseases, the pregnancies, the despair. You have survived. And you will survive this, too. You reach the gate. The moon is high, the streets are empty, and you can see the dark shape of the Via Appia stretching out before you, a road that leads to the sea, to a new life, to freedom. You take a deep breath, you adjust your bundle on your shoulder, and you walk. Behind you, the lights of Rome flicker and fade. The lupanar is a distant memory, a nightmare from which you have finally woken. Ahead, there is only darkness, and the road, and the hope that somewhere, at the end of it, there is a place where you can be a person again, a woman with a name and a life that belongs to no one but yourself. The Leno will find you. Or he will not. It does not matter. What matters is that you are walking, that you are free, that for one moment, in the cool darkness of the Roman night, you are no one's property, no one's meretrix, no one's infamous. You are a woman, alone on a road, with nothing but your feet and your will and the last, precious coins in your pocket. And that, after a lifetime of being bought and sold, is everything. You do not know that, 2,000 years from now, your story will still be told. You do not know that the walls of the lupanar in Pompeii will be excavated, that the graffiti you scratched with a nail will be photographed and studied, that the name Emilia or Myrtis or Fausta will appear in textbooks and documentaries. You do not know that the children of the future will walk through the rooms where you lived and worked, that they will see the stone beds and the oil lamps and the faded frescoes, and that some of them will wonder who you were, what you thought, what you felt. You do not know that you will become a symbol, a ghost, a story that refuses to die. But perhaps, in the darkness of your cella, in the quiet moments between clients, you have imagined it. You have imagined that someone, someday, will know your name. That the life you have lived, the suffering you have endured, the small acts of kindness and resilience that have marked your days, will not be forgotten. That the stone will remember when the flesh has turned to dust, that the walls will speak when your voice is silent. It is a small comfort, a tiny flicker of hope in a life that has offered so little. But it is enough. It is enough to keep you going, to keep you walking, to keep you alive. The Roman Empire will fall. The gods will be forgotten. The marble will crumble and the bronze will melt. But the memory of the meretrix, the lupa, the infamous, will endure. It will endure in the fragments of poetry and the scraps of law, in the graffiti on the walls and the cursed tablets buried in the earth. It will endure because you endured, because you lived and loved and suffered and hoped, because you were human in a world that tried to make you less. And in the end, that is the only victory that matters, to have been, to have existed, to have left a mark, however faint, on the stone of history. You are not a name in a ledger. You are not a price in a lupanar. You are not a metaphor for the decline of Rome or the corruption of the age. You are a woman, a mother, a survivor. You are the one who woke up in the darkness and put on your face, who called out to strangers on the street, who saved your coins and dreamed of a better life. You are the one who walked out of the gate on the Via Appia, into the night, into the unknown. And whether you found freedom or found death, you walked. You walked. And that is your story, the story that the stone will tell, when everything else is dust. The Via Appia stretches south, a straight line of stone cutting through the dark countryside. The air is cool and clean, scented with wild herbs and the distant salt of the sea. You walk, and as you walk, the weight of the lupanar begins to lift from your shoulders. You are no longer Emilia the meretrix, no longer the woman with the painted face and the short toga. You are simply a traveler, a woman on a road, with the stars above you and the earth beneath your feet. It is a feeling you have not known since childhood, since the days before the Leno, before the cellar, before the endless parade of strangers and their demands. It is the feeling of being free. You will find a village before dawn, mutatio, where you can buy bread and rest your feet. You will tell them a story of a widow from a distant town, a woman who lost her husband and her home and is now seeking work in the south. They will believe you, or they will not, but they will let you pass. You will find work in a taberna, serving wine to travelers, listening to their stories, keeping your own to yourself. You will be invisible, anonymous, free. You will grow old, perhaps, or you will not. But for now, there is only the road, and the night, and the promise of dawn. Behind you, Rome sleeps. The lupanar is quiet, the celli empty, the Leno snoring on his bed of stolen coin. The vigiles patrol the streets, their torches flickering in the darkness. The matroni lie beside their husbands, dreaming of virtue and forgetting the price it exacts. The poets are at work on their satires, the philosophers on their treatises, the historians on their chronicles of empire. They will write their versions of Rome, their stories of glory and decline, of heroes and villains, of the great and the good. But your story, the story of the woman who walked out of the gate on the Via Appia, will not be in their books. It will be in the stone, in the fragments, in the silence between the lines. It will be in the road itself, the ancient road that has carried so many travelers, so many hopes, so many dreams. You walk. The moon sets. The first light of dawn begins to color the eastern sky. You are tired, but you do not stop. You have been tired for 20 years, and you have learned to keep walking. The road goes on, and you go with it, a small figure in the vast landscape of history, a name that no one will remember, a life that no one will record. But for now, in this moment, you are alive. And that, you think, is enough. That is everything. The road continues. And so do you.